In today's video, we'll look at how fighters in Pathfinder 2nd Edition continue to stay fun into higher levels. This is part of a video series in which I've looked at how Pathfinder fixes fighters, which are widely seen as boring or weak in D&D 5th Edition. Earlier, I gave an overview of the fighter, built 5 level 1 human fighters using only the core rulebook, and put them through a combat demonstration, did a deep dive into what Pathfinder did to fix fighters, and here, this is the climactic part in which we look at what they can look forward to at higher levels, and also other aspects of the system that make playing a fighter fun. Before watching this video, I highly recommend watching either Part 2, the combat demonstration, or Part 3, my analysis of what Pathfinder did with fighters, because much of the fun of playing a fighter is not just in the building process of your character. It's the choices you have every turn, which are often different from turn to turn. You're not usually doing the same thing. And the choices you make in combat are often more impactful than your choices at character creation. One needs to appreciate that in order to fully appreciate what we're about to see. Now we get to what I think is the most mind-blowing part of the video, what the 5 builds can look forward to as they level up. First, when they level up, all of their statistics go up, including their attack bonuses, all of their saving throw bonuses, even their ACs. At level 2, these fighters get a class feat and a skill feat, as they do at every even-numbered level. And fighters have more feats than any other class. In the core rulebook alone, there are 73 feats. You don't need to read them all because they tend to be balanced, and they tend to give you more options. 53 of them give you a new kind of action that is competing for your 3 actions. I'll now go through 5 builds, and I say that in quotes because these are not railroads. You can still, there are no auto picks, for example, if you're an archer, that you must take something. You might want to mix and match it with something else, and I'll show these branches as we go through each one. I'm going to start with the ones that are provided as recommended builds in the core rulebook. First is the Archer, and the core rulebook does not give a recommendation for level 2. But when you look at the list of level 2 feats, there is one that's clearly about archery, and that's Assisting Shot. This lets you, as part of your second or later attack, try to hit a creature, and if you hit and damage it, you're going to give assistance to the next ally who tries to hit it. Now, this is not an auto pick, however, because you can choose other feats at level 2, and you also can choose any of the lower level feats. Perhaps you want to wear a buckler and take reactive shield so that you can defend yourself with your reaction, since you have little uses for your reaction normally as an archer. Or you want exacting strike so that if you make a second attack on your turn and it misses, your third shot will be just as accurate. The recommended build has you choosing double shot at level 4, which lets you spend 2 actions to make 2 bow strikes against 2 different enemies, and they each have a -2 penalty, which in some situations is what you want to do. Level 6 is triple shot, which first of all gives you the option to fire 3 arrows for 2 actions at a -4 penalty, but also lets you direct them all at the same enemy. At level 10, there's the debilitating shot, where you spend 2 actions to fire at an enemy, and when you hit, you deny them an action on their next turn. Then at level 16, there's a multi-shot stance, where you spend an action to enter a stance, and your penalties for double shot and triple shot are cut in half. Level 18 has Impossible Volley, which lets you fire an arrow at every single enemy within a 10-foot radius burst with a -2 penalty, and you get to do a single attack roll against all of them. So this is a great time to spend that hero point. For the bully with the 2-handed weapon who wants to push people around, we have several choices at level 2 that the core rulebook does not provide. First, there's Brutish Shove. With your follow-up attack, you can basically shove an enemy in addition to dealing damage to them. Then there's Intimidating Strike, which if you like to frighten enemies, you get to spend 2 actions to try to hit something and frighten them simultaneously. And there's also, especially if you have a reach weapon like Billy did in our example, maybe you want Lunge, where you can have an extra 5 feet reach to your weapon when you strike during your turn. The core rulebook recommends level 4 Knockdown, which lets you spend 2 actions where you hit something and can immediately try to trip it at the same attack bonus. And you could get to do this with any 2-handed weapon, even those that do not have the trip trait. The level 6 feat is Furious Focus. The level 1 power attack that you took counts as 2 attacks towards your multiple attack penalty, and Furious Focus makes that only 1. At level 8 is Positioning Assault, where you try to strike something with 2 actions, and if you connect, you can move them 5 feet within your reach. Level 12 is Brutal Finish, where you get to use a follow-up attack to do extra damage and then immediately end your turn. Even if you miss this attack, you do 1 damage die of your weapon. So it's a way to finish off a low health enemy or just do a lot of damage. Level 18 is Savage Critical, which doubles your crit range to 19 to 20. And I say that in quotes because it increases your degree of success by 1. But that is usually a critical hit. Very useful against boss creatures, those that you need a 20 to crit to begin with. And those are the fights that count. Our Duelist with the free hand can take Dueling Parry at level 2, which means raising your weapon, and you get the same AC bonus as you would with the shield. So you basically have the benefits of a shield without needing to occupy your free hand. But another good choice, I would argue, is Combat Grab, where with a follow-up attack, you can try to strike an enemy, and if you connect, you also grapple them for free. Another sound choice if you have a reach weapon, like our Duelist had with his whip, is Lunge to get that extra reach. He can even disarm and trip enemies with that 15-foot reach. And just to have fun, let's imagine that the Enlarge spell is cast on him. I'll show on the screen what that would look like. He would get to trip enemies from 20 feet away and do an attack of opportunity in that entire area. Level 6 is Guardian's Deflection, lets you guard an ally who is within your reach, who gets hit by an enemy. And if +2 to their AC would prevent that hit, or turn a critical hit into a regular hit, then you can make that happen. And if you have a whip, you can do that at range. Level 8 is Dueling Riposte. If an enemy critically fails in trying to attack you, you can, as a reaction, strike them back or try to disarm them back. Then at level 12, there is Dueling Dance, where you basically spend an action to enter the stance where you always are parrying and have that +2 to AC. And level 14 is Stance Savant, where you get to enter a stance for free when you roll initiative. Then the last 2 builds that I made up, I'm just going to look at their choices at level 2. For the Sword and Board build, there's Aggressive Block, where when they shield block to soak damage with their shield, they can also knock that enemy off balance. The enemy has a choice of being flat-footed or being knocked back 5 feet. They can also choose the level 1 feat Double Slice since they're wielding 2 weapons, one of them being a shield. Even though it's called Slice, they can do 2 attacks with each weapon. Because it's not agile, that shield would have a -2 penalty, but would be more accurate than otherwise. Also, the level 1 feat Exacting Strike is a sound choice, where if you see yourself more offensive in your tanking, drawing attention, then yeah, you can make 3 attacks on your turn, and if that second one misses, that last one isn't so inaccurate. And remember, you have the reactive shield feat. You don't need to raise your shield during your turn. You can still benefit from that shield. For the 2-weapon fighter, she might want to get Lunge if she wants to have more reach toward enemies, different enemies in combat while doing her flurry of weapon swings. She might also want to get Exacting Strike so that she can make multiple attacks and none of them are wildly inaccurate. She can also strap on a shield and take the reactive shield feat and have that as a potential offhand weapon after she throws her Star Knife. And also when she's wielding the shield, she can defend herself when needed. Also deserving honorable mention, especially if you have a reach weapon like Billy did, is the level 10 feat Combat Reflexes, which lets you have 1 more reaction per turn, which must be attack of opportunity. You can surprise enemies with your second reaction and further defend and control an area. Other notable feats in the core rulebook are level 14, Whirlwind Strike, where you spend 3 actions to strike every enemy in your reach. This is especially great if you have a reach weapon. Who said that casters are the only ones that should have AoE attacks? Let's say the wizard casts Enlarge on Billy. He's now a human fireball that can exclude allies. Let's say Billy then takes the level 20 feat Weapon Supremacy. He's now permanently quickened and has a 4th action every turn that must be to strike or to move. He's now a moving human fireball. Or at level 20, he might want Boundless Reprisals, which gives him a new reaction at the start of every creature's turn. so he can hit everybody who tries to run past him, or just stand in an area of spellcasters and threaten to shut all of them down. And in making these choices, you don't have to worry about deep feat chains, worrying about getting a feat that sets you up to get a feat at a higher level. The deepest feat chain is 3 feats here, and both of these level 20 feats I mentioned had no prerequisites. And all of that was only talking about class feats. There are also skill feats, which can be a lot of fun too. We've only seen them being trained in their respective skills in this combat demonstration, but you can increase a skill eventually to expert, then up to master once you're 7th level, and then once you're 15th level, up to legendary. And not only does this increase your bonus by 2, but it also unlocks more awesome skill feats. I'd be remiss not to repeat that simply leveling up increases all of your trained skills by 1. This means that climbing that pit becomes increasingly easy and then trivial as you level up, and also doing a basic battle medicine check. For athletics, the Titan Wrestler feat, which Billy had, becomes inherently better. When you are legendary in it, you get to do combat maneuvers on creatures that are 3 size categories larger than you. That means that Billy can shove a Tarrasque when he gets to level 15. Being a master in athletics lets you have a climb speed or a swim speed. The legendary feat Cloud Jump means that your character can jump a 100-foot span, and if you combine that with Quick Jump, you don't even need a running start for that. If you're a master in stealth, you can take the Swift Sneak feat and sneak around at full speed, and there's a legendary feat that lets you hide in plain sight in the middle of an open area. Battle Medicine, when you become legendary in medicine, lets you add 40 to the amount you heal with a healing check. And finally, if you're a legendary in Intimidation, you can take the feat Scare to Death, which does exactly what it says. All the while, you're gaining general feats and ancestry feats to further customize and enhance your character. Also, at higher levels, you can add runes to your weapons and your armor, making them more effective, not only in basic math, but also to give them properties such as flaming on your weapon. Meanwhile, your base class progression is increasing your damage as you level up to +8 per hit at level 15. You can go wild with property runes. Everything has been core rulebook so far, but I have to mention the extending rune from Secrets of Magic, which lets your melee weapon hit something from 60 feet away or 120 feet away. There's a rune to put on your armor that lets you fly. So property runes combined with your choice of weapons can further tailor your fighting style or styles. At level 5, your fighter becomes master in one group of weapons and unlocks their critical specialization effects. You also get the equivalent of evasion, where when you succeed, you critically succeed, against fear effects, then against things that call for fortitude saves like poison and paralysis, and then against things that call for reflex saves like fireball. Then you gain martial flexibility, which lets you every morning prepare a feat that is level 8 or lower, and at level 15 you get to add a second feat to that. So for example, if you are expecting to fight a dragon that day, maybe you will prepare Felling Strike to bring a flying enemy down to the ground. Or if you're expecting invisible creatures, maybe you want to prepare Blind Fight that morning. Let's revisit the martial caster balance at level 15. At that level, it's extremely common to face creatures that are a couple levels lower than the party who have an armor class of 33. At that point, the wizard is going to have a +26 to their spell attack bonus, and casting their cantrip, Telekinetic Projectile, it's now doing more damage. On average, with their 2-action spell, they'll be doing 30 damage. They can also spend one of their highest level spell slots to cast Disintegrate, and on average, that will do 81 points of damage. Meanwhile, the fighter, with a long sword and having 2 damage runes that add 1d6 each of different damage types, will have a +30 to their attack bonus. And there's different reasons for that. One, they're legendary with their attacks, but also they can apply magical runes to their weapons. If they're spending 2 actions to try to strike that foe, they are going to be doing on average 70 damage. And notably, you can hit on a 3 and critically hit on a 13. And you can do the critical specialization effect on your crits. For the longsword, it makes them flat-footed, not only to you, but to your whole party. So one strategy is for everyone in your party to delay so that you act right after the boss's turn and make that boss flat-footed to everyone. And you do tremendous damage with every single strike, and each one only takes one action, and you have attacks of opportunity. So you are outclassing the casters in single target damage, no question. And by then, you're also even tougher than wizards are. You have more hit points, you have the equivalent of evasion against things that call for fortitude saves and reflex saves, or are fear effects, which is many will save effects. And finally, you probably have an advantage in a 1v1 against a caster. If you can get in their face, you can strike them if they try to cast a spell. And if you took the level 10 feat disruptive stance, then you can disrupt that spell on a regular success when rolling a 5. So they're not going to be able to cast that Misty Step to get away from you and cast Force Cage on you. If they get Force Cage on you, you can actually bust your way out precisely because you're a strong martial. And you're comparable to casters without feeling like a caster. You don't have to learn spells. You don't have to take a level in caster. All of these abilities are repeatable, spammable. You don't have to track their uses. To beat casters in Pathfinder, you don't need to join them. You just need to kick their ass. And I've not even mentioned archetypes, which are Pathfinder's version of multiclassing. You can, instead of choosing a class feat at an even numbered level, get the abilities of an archetype. And some of those archetypes are of other classes. Those are called multi-class archetypes. So one thing you could do is at level 2, get an archetype that gives you a spell like Electric Arc, which lets you attack 2 enemies within 30 feet, and they make a saving throw or take electricity damage. And that does not contribute to your multiple attack penalty. So maybe you want to swing a sword and cast Electric Arc, perfectly viable as long as they have a decent spellcasting stat. And remember that Pathfinder is generous with ability score bonuses, letting you add boosts to 4 different ability scores every 5 levels. So you can have a second stat that's at 18 at level 5. Or maybe you want to dip into Barbarian. Now you can rage as many times as you want per day. You get a damage bonus and some temporary hit points at the cost of -1 to your AC. And both of those things I mentioned only cost 1 feat. Or you want to have an animal companion. Take the Beastmaster feat, and now you can have an animal accompany you on your adventures. And it manages to stay balanced and levels up with you as you level up in Pathfinder. You just spend 1 action to command it, it takes 2 actions. Or you want to be a leader on the battlefield. There's the Martial archetype, which lets you inspire your allies and also give them free actions as you get into higher levels. Or maybe take the Poisoner archetype. Maybe our Duelist wants to put poison on his whip, or our Archer wants to put poison on some of his arrows. And then there's the Wrestler archetype, which lets you grapple and suplex enemies. And if there's a shape-changing enemy, you can squeeze them back into their original form. And all of these choices are available to you, and it manages to still stay balanced. There's no archetype dipping the way there's level dipping. You must take 3 feats within an archetype before you can move on to another one. And you might take 0 fighter feats after level 1, but as you level up, you don't fall behind as a fighter because the basic math is baked in. You're still going to do the same amount of damage as in my example. You're still going to be tough, and you're still going to be able to train 2 fighter feats in the morning, while maybe still being able to cast 8th level spells in 2 different classes. Also, some tables may choose the very popular variant rule, free archetype, which gives you an extra feat every even level that must be used on archetypes, which allows for even more variability between fighters and more customization. And then finally, we don't need to have our artificial restriction we had in this experiment. You don't need to be a human. There are many flavorful heritages you can pick. We just chose the generic ones in this example, but even just in the core rulebook, you can be half elf or half orc and unlock whole lists of other ancestry feats by doing so and get low light vision. You can also have your human heritage not be human. There are what are called versatile heritages in 2E, where you can give your ancestry, whatever it is, part angel origin or demon origin by putting on the respective versatile heritage. And finally, your base ancestry does not need to be human. There are many others that have their own heritages and menus of feats. You can have a kobold fighter who also takes the cringe feat, who, if an enemy critically hits them, they cringe and gain sympathy, causing that critical hit to do less damage. You can be a plant person called a Leshy, and if you take the root Leshy heritage, you can have hit points comparable to a dwarf's. And if you take the ancestry feat seed pods, you can shoot seeds that are ranged unarmed attacks at enemies. So you can be a duelist with a whip or a rapier, and your free hand is itself a weapon. Or you can be an elf and have the tiefling versatile heritage. Not all tieflings are human in Pathfinder. And let's say you've had it with weapon fighting for the day and you want to unleash your final tiefling form in a particular battle. You now get to embrace your monstrous blood and make it your own, screaming out to the heavens and hells in rage, pain, and defiance. And you're now able to fly around the battle, deafening and dazzling everyone, shooting fireballs and lightning bolts. Who doesn't want that? And we're talking about the boring class in Pathfinder 2e. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. If you liked, like. If you want to get more content, subscribe and ring the bell. If you're interested in checking out Pathfinder 2nd Edition, get the beginner's box or check out the rules, which are free online. Also, join my Discord community, which is very welcoming and will help you through the process. And also support my Patreon, which lets you get early access to most of my videos and also to my full reactions. Also, it's my income, together with this channel and the RPGs that I run. So that's it. I'm Ronald. I've been the Rules Lawyer. Thank you for watching.